Hello, and welcome to Medill Sports Talk, where we discuss all things related to sports. I'm Chris McConaghey.
And I'm Joshua Skinner.
Wimbledon's tennis premier tournament has been going on the past 2 weeks, Josh, and we had the finals this past weekend with Serena Williams versus Simona Halep, and on the men's side, Roger Federer versus Novak Djokovic. We'll start with the women, though, where Halep pulled off the biggest upset on Saturday over Serena. What other surprises from the women's side were there, Josh, you can tell me about?
Well, the first one, Chris, I think the Coco Gauff run. Every now and then, about every decade or so, we see on the women's side of a Grand Slam somebody make a deep run as a teenager, right? And so this was the deepest run that anyone had made in a Grand Slam since Jennifer Capriati in the early 90s when she made it all the way to the semifinals of the French Open. And it's going to be interesting to see because sometimes these are flashes in the pan. Sometimes they go on to have these great careers. So it's going to be interesting to see what she does next. I'm really excited to see how she does. Second off, I think that Naomi Osaka's disappointment on the other side of the young tennis player is very disappointing. She fired her coach, Sasha Bahin, in the beginning of the year in January. She hasn't been the same player since. She hasn't done anything at all. And she's been knocked out early in the last two Grand Slam tournaments. She's having issues with her temper. She's losing control in these matches. And, you know, it's fine to get angry if you can stay in control. But she's losing it, and it's affecting her play. And I'm really hoping that she can adjust as we move forward. She's still young. She has plenty of time to do that. Finally, I think that the Serena Williams issue it's going to be interesting how she'll go going forward because she's now lost 3 straight finals in the Grand Slams after winning 10 of her previous 13. Is time catching up with her? We'll talk about that a little more in a few minutes.
Yes, we will. I'm also thinking Halep's big win shocked most of us in the sports world, Josh. Did Halep win the match or did Serena lose it?
It's funny. I think the American media likes to focus everything around how Serena does, but Halep won this match. It's one of the most dominating performances in Wimbledon's women's singles history. 6-2, 6-2. The whole match took under an hour. It was over almost as soon as it started. And I think Halep put it best when asked after the match how she did. She said, "I played the best match of my life. I've never played this well." She had 3 unforced errors to Serena's 27, and I think that Halep was this tennis player who was very highly ranked for years, but she was always the woman who couldn't get it done. She was kind of a Dirk Nowitzki type, or maybe a LeBron James who was chided for not John Elway, who couldn't win the big match when it mattered. She's now won 2 in the last 2 years, and I think the future's looking very bright for her, Chris.
I hope so. She had a hell of a match, and her run was outstanding. There's definitely been a change of guard in the WTP. So, Josh, where does Serena go from here?
It's going to be interesting. Serena, she's pretty much 38 years old, right? And her playing, she doesn't play quite as much on the tour as she used to. And I think at that age, that's smart, but I don't think she's playing enough. And I think that's starting to take a toll on her. Age is going to catch up to everyone. And the rise in competition in the women's game, when Serena came on, it was right at the cross between the end of the Steffi Graf era and the rise of Serena and Venus Williams. And there wasn't quite as much competition then as there is now, and I think that's catching her.
Yeah, I think age is definitely a factor in this WTP, and I think that it definitely will come into fruition eventually.
And Chris, I think there's a power dynamic that's staying the same in men's tennis. What were your thoughts on the men's side?
So, obviously, Rafa had a great run, stopped by Federer's style of play when it comes to grass courts, as he is, known as the king of the grass. Joao Sosa versus Daniel Evans' match was also a good match, going into 5 sets, which we'll talk more about that also later. But on one of the longest matches of the tournament, Josh, what do you have to say about that?
On the longest match of the tournament?
Yeah, well, what was the longest match of the tournament, and how do you feel about it?
I mean, I think that the 5-hour men's final it's intense. It's funny because I started watching it and then I had to leave and I left for a couple hours, came back. It's still going on. It's amazing.
It just never ended, man.
It's almost like it's longer than a college football game now that it goes on forever. But I think in tennis we kind of accept that. We think, wow, this is awesome. It's going on forever. Whereas if something like that happens in football, everyone's like, oh my goodness, when's it going to end? So I was really excited to see that, and I think that we're starting to see a little bit of a change in the dynamic or we're not seeing a change in the dynamic in men's tennis as we are in women's, Chris.
Yeah, so Djokovic barely edged Federer in the match for the ages. Both players in the mid-to-late 30s, Djokovic 32, Federer 37, showed astounding stamina. Congratulations to Federer in a good match, though. What are your overall thoughts, Josh, on what we've been seeing lately in men's tennis?
Yeah, just to kind of expound on what I was going on there just a second ago. I think we're seeing 3 dominant players in men's tennis, and it's not changing. No one's coming up behind them. In this decade, only 2 other players have won a Grand Slam.
Yes.
And that's Marin Cilic and Stan Wawrinka are the only 2 others, and both of them won the U.S. Open, which is coming up next. No one's won any of the other 3, so it's quite interesting to see. But who's going to come behind these guys? It's not. I don't think it's going to be John Isner. He's kind of getting old. There's no real young 18, 19, 20-year-olds moving up in men's tennis.
There's no competition.
And Djokovic, he's still early 30s, but once he moves into that late 30s, you're going to see Rafa and Federer eventually start to tail off. And I don't know what's going to happen to men's tennis once those 3 guys are gone.
Definitely, Josh. Keeping up with some of these younger guys is going to be difficult. For me, Federer has always been personally been my favorite player, and he has an extremely history of doing well in London. And even though he is approaching 38 years old, he's still able to keep up with some of these younger guys on the court, like Rafa and Eisner and all of those. Josh, do you see anybody else who's able to challenge these guys at the U.S. Open next month?
I'm just gonna be honest with you, Chris. No, I don't see it. I don't see it
Me
at all.
neither.
No.
Me neither. So, well, that's all we have for today. Thanks for talking about Wimbledon tennis. That's all for Wimbledon in the next few weeks. Coming up, it's on the block with Kate Constable, Andre Turan, and Louis Ricard. Stay tuned.